Thank you.
You know, normally okay with videotape, just so you know. This debate is about who brings people to the negotiating table who operate on securitized assumptions. This debate is not about choosing to securitize or not, because people on the brink of escalating ethnic conflicts are already acting on those securitized assumptions. The alternative can do nothing to stop them from acting on those assumptions, no matter how preachy the alternative gets on them. Our row evidence is that management has become before intercultural dialogue. We need to make the hard political choices about the specific possible threats to identity, because it's the only way that specific identities are willing to respond to people at the negotiating table. You should not defer to the negative characterization of our evidence. Because the U.S. imposes a securitized durable on the status quo, they should be the first ones to act and impose forms of federal level democratic systems that actually mediate the differences between identity between identities that correspond with ethnic conflicts. Only the alternative leads to a form of assimilation where the differences between identities are ultimately mooted because they have improper discourse. So row evidence is this kind of critical analysis. What ultimately causes violence in the first place. Just proves the alternatives. Everything just proves the alternatives. Anything backwards. Their evidence is that the moderate threats are the only way. The only way that political structures can come together to deal with differences because they perceive them as threats to their own identity. Our evidence says failure to recognize that is inherent assimilation of those differences, which causes the death of the minority in and of itself. Their threats are there are arguments about threats being false. Ignore the fact that violence is happening now. The alternative can't do anything to stop that. Just based on critical discursive analysis. Just based on critical discursive analysis of this question. The alternative is to do anything to change the way the world actually works. Change the way it actually works. There's Akari evidence or Canada evidence are not about rogue states proliferating. Rather, they're about these kinds of ethnic conflicts forcing great power state forcing rational states like the United States specific nuclear war scenarios or general sentences draws in outside powers like the U.S. For evidence on this question is based on quantitative studies. The permutation debate. We can criticize the so-called racist gendered assumptions, security discourse that the one to see while acknowledging the threats do exist. Or row evidence should not rule out modern securitization, because such modern securitization rules out the kinds of emergency politics that cause the state-sponsored genocide as per their impacts. Our row evidence is with this kind of modern securitization, identities are ultimately transformed to destroy the friend enemy dichotomy that makes their kind of violence inevitable in the first place. Just for the permutation on this question, political strategy, the opposite political strategy said how to get people to the negotiating table to work out the differences of minorities. When evidence that the constant discursive questioning of the alternative to cause paradigm wars are the inherent focus of epistemology led to 200 years of non-action by intellectuals on this question. Just proves that the alternative can never create minority compromise by just scolding improper assumptions. Instead, their Jones evidence is just about their Jones evidence is exactly what the their Jones evidence exactly what the permutation is. Only the plan brings people who are inherently used to those assumptions, brings them to the negotiating table because it recognizes those people are threats in the first place. But only the affirmative takes those threats. Only the affirmative takes those threats into account and says that we have to deal with them in a political manner. Is that agreement?
Yeah. But I think at that point you should have, you need to have a concrete, kind of what I was telling Andrew, you need to have a concrete argument or example here, where it's just to make it make sense to the
I don't think Israel-Palestine's a good example. Like, I told Caitlin the example, she just, find a better example.
What do you?
Well, we were having the Nietzsche debate, I, gave her the example, which being, if you ignore that, you need security rhetoric to get Israel-Palestine worked out.
The argument isn't that it's not so much about security rhetoric being good. It's more about saying that just because you used bad security language, even if it was bad, right, is a reason that you don't get to then continue the debate about the specific policy when no negotiations ever happen. Imagine if Israel and Palestine got together over water rights and in order to discuss creating a more inclusive federal system within Israel, and or the Shiite and Sunnis got together to talk about how to create a more federal structure. And one of the Shiite leaders said, the Sunnis are a threat to my people because of the way in which they've set up certain settlements. The alternative's answer is we need to stop this entire discussion over water rights. We can't continue until you apologize. Right? If